Hello and welcome to a fast and furious tutorial about making GIFs in Photoshop. I've broken this process down into 5 steps. Importing images as stacks, making layers into frames of a timeline, doing a little bit of cleanup, adding some non-destructive adjustment layers, and then saving it for the web. Let's get started. So here I have a folder of my images. The easiest way to get these all into the same Photoshop document is to say File, Scripts, Load Files into Stack. Now we can just browse for the folder, and I'm going to select all the images and hit OK, and I'll say OK. Now to put them into a timeline. So if we go to Windows, Timeline, that'll bring up our little animation menu down here and hit Create Video Timeline. And that automatically makes every layer into a 5-second video clip, which is super unhelpful, but that's just the default. Also by default, I think it's at like 30 frames a second. So what you can do is go to set timeline frame rate. And for something that's kind of choppy like this, stop motion, I'm gonna say 6 frames per second because I think the less frames there are, the later the GIF will be. So, okay. And then you wanna make all of these just 1 frame long, and you could just kind of like drag each one back. Again, I don't think there's a really smart way to do this, but the easiest way I've found is to just select everything, hit the scissors, and now holding Command down, I can select all of the extra, hit delete, and now everything's just 1 frame long. And then the last thing to do is to just start throwing your frames into the same layer like this. All right, so there we go. Already we've got this funky little motion. Step 3, we're gonna clean this up. And by that I just mean make the crop make a little more sense and make sure that things are staying kind of consistent within the crop. So I'm going to take my kind of hero image and then Command R brings up my rulers. I'm just going to kind of hit the outside edge of these as if I was trying to figure out a mat or something. So it's like a little heavier on the left side. Might bring that in, clear that, because we don't really care about the ratio as long as it looks nice. Then hit enter. Also, you want to make sure that delete cropped pixels is unchecked, because that way you can go back and recrop depending on what else you might learn. Then I'll go to my end frame and say, all right, it ends a little low. I can probably bring this down even more. Command and the semicolon button, the colon semicolon, is an easy way to bring the guides on and off. That looks pretty good for now, but by the time I get to this end, it is not quite centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say every one of these frames should be kind of in the center of this box. So I'm just going to eyeball it and say this, and you can flip through. If you have enable timeline shortcut keys, you should be able to use your arrow keys to just advance through and watch it like that. So you can flip back and say, okay, that feels good. That feels good. Another weird thing is in order to transform or edit these layers, you have to have this timeline header at the frame, and you also have to select the frame. It's like this weird double. Photoshop is not really meant for animation, so I think there's just a lot of stuff like that where they're just like, meh. Good enough for who it's for. Now, since I want this to boomerang, I'm going to select everything and drag it over to the add layer, which makes a copy of it. But then because it just starts it over, I need to go up to layer, arrange, reverse. Okay, step 4 is the adjustment layers. This little half white, half black circle, if you go up, and I'm going to start with levels. I feel like that's a good one to just kind of get the exposure right. So for levels, what I usually do, I say like, okay, it looks like this middle slider, if I take it to the left a little bit, it'll give me some more detail in those darker values. And then this bottom slider sets the max white and max black points. So like if I bring this down, it just kind of does a nice job of fading all of the highlights a little bit, so there's not as much gradient that happens from the darkest corner to the lightest corner. So I really like to use that just to kind of like flatten things up a little bit. I might not even need to. So flatten, okay. But I think that looks cool, I like that. The look I'm going for is just like super neutral, which brings me to my next goal, which is to make this background way less blue. I'm gonna try to get that to look just like a light gray. So I will add a selective color. I used to use color balance a lot, but then I found a selective color and I was like, whoa, this is so cool, because it's kind of like color balance, but instead of affecting the entire image, it just affects these, you say like, let's just look at the whites here and take out some of the cyan. And so it's not really affecting the more saturated or darker colors as much. So just to show you, I'm going to slide all of these sliders over. Already, it just kind of like lightens up, takes the saturation out, but it's still looking blue. I wonder if I'll leave it like that, a little bit lower, and then try the neutrals. Maybe this is too dark to be considered a white. Whoa, okay, so that's not helpful at all. Maybe I should use a color balance. This way I can say, let's look at the highlight tones, take a little of that blue, that cyan out, take the blue out. Okay, now we're getting a nice kind of neutral feeling gray. Is it too green? Should I? If you throw your cursor in here and then just use the arrow keys up and down, you can really find that perfect thing, because sometimes you don't know it till you see it. Just kind of have to say, is that better, is that better, is that better, is that better? But then always just like come back and say, okay, that was what it was originally. This looks so much better. Let's play the animation. Yeah, it's starting to look like a real thing. And then maybe, yeah, at this point I don't want to blow out any of the highlights, so I'll put that back. Oh yeah. And now we're all ready to step 5, which is save your file. There is a legacy option under export called Save for Web. First thing you want to do is the image size, because that's going to be what slows you down the most. I've been making these about 800. I'm not a huge expert on what all these options are, but I know that it's going to look the best with the most colors, just because this is a full color photograph kind of thing. We want that range. And then another very important setting is this lossy, which anytime you have large areas of similar color, it's going to not reload them. So if you look at this file size down here, it says 4.5 megs right now. If we increase the lossy to 10, we've already taken off 2 megs from this size. Let's see. And then you can hit preview to view it in your browser, just to see what it's looking like while it moves. It's got an interesting look. It's kind of noisy. It's got a lot of texture, but let's try that out. So I'm going to hit save, and I'm just gonna save it to the desktop. And that's it. That's all there is to it.